young country eager to learn, grow and move forward. There's of course no debate around the fact that education is going to be the game changer for India in the years and decades ahead. Along with the government, private players now playing a very crucial role in changing the education scenario in India. But of course, the glass is half full and half empty as always. What do we need on the road ahead? We've made a beginning, but how can we leverage our position? That's what we are looking at in this special panel debate. I have special guests with me, Dr. Gurinder Singh, Amity Group Additional Vice Chancellor, Dr. Pramatraj Sinha, Founder and Trustee, Ashoka University, Founding Dean, ISB Hyderabad, Rohin Kapoor, Senior Manager with Deloitte, and of course, our expert Mahesh Sharma of Careers 360. Thanks all so much for being with us. Dr. Sinha, there is no doubt that private players, like I said, have changed the scenario as far as education is concerned. What do you believe has been their biggest success and their one biggest failure?
Well, that's a loaded question to start off with. I think the biggest success really has been the ability to expand the sector itself. So I think some of these figures have been officially reported, but if you look at it in terms of the number of institutions and if you look at it in terms of the number of students enrolled in private universities and colleges, you will find that that number is upwards of 60%. And so you would argue that in a very short period of time, the advent of private players has really expanded the sector quite substantially and has contributed a lot to this expanded GER that we are talking about. I'm afraid the biggest challenge, and maybe it's too strong to say failure, has been that they haven't been able to do it at quality.
Right, absolutely.
And that's a problem that plagues our entire education sector, whether it is private or public. However, it is very true that unlike the school sector, in the K-12 sector, most people like to send their children to private schools, and there's a clear perception that if it's a private school, it will be good quality and they'll have the edge. Unfortunately, there's a lot of skepticism about private players in higher education, and that continues to be so. And I think that's where we have failed as a country to not set that right. And I think that's the big challenge going forward.
Right. Dr. Singh, if you're in agreement with what has just been said, what do you believe is the one thing that is lacking that could have changed this perception? Because, you know, we have all those parents who queue up year after year, you know, trying to get into the best private schools possible. We know that the lacuna, especially in our big cities. But when it comes to higher education, why aren't we sort of opening up and more aware? Why are our youngsters still perhaps a bit wary? There are a few exceptions, of course, to these private universities. But why, on the whole, why does that happen? What do you believe is the one thing that could change this scenario?
Well, I think that there are two kinds of players in this sector. One is very serious players and the big players. Right? Those who have invested in the resources and who are really very focused and who are able to give the quality. Like there are institutions who have been able to focus quite a lot on research. There are universities who have been able to give more than 560 patents. And many of the government institutions, even all the IITs together, they have not been able to do 500 patents. And some of the good universities like MIT, they have been able to produce 560 patents. You look at the incubation of the companies. These universities are focusing on incubation of the new companies. If you look at the employment, very high degree of employment is generated, it's more than 100%. And then you will look at there are small players, you know, that those who don't have the resources. So government has to actually think, and we have got a very dynamic government and very dynamic education minister, and there's a hope that with the new education policy and with the re-engineering, that things will improve.
You know, Rohin, we've been speaking about this for a while. We've been speaking about the lack of quality education, faculty being a problem, trained faculty, you know, the know-how being a problem, infrastructure being a problem. Is this, you believe, one of the big reasons why we're lacking behind, say, global peers? Leave aside the big players globally, but even our peers. Look, you know, China has always thrown at us and how they're sort of progressing leaps and bounds.
I think what has been lacking has been the focus of the government on the education sector to develop it. You know, government clearly has had very other priorities in the past, but the focus on the education sector has been lacking. Now, the reason why the focus hasn't happened is because the government has been, not giving a lot of importance to the
Right.
sector, and that is not, resulted in quality institutions and also a number of institutions in terms of capacity
Right.
that develop around the country. Now, education being a right under the constitution, clearly the government has to focus
Right.
on education, because private education institutions will focus on those areas which are like Delhi, Bombay, the key metropolitan or the other
Right.
parts of India. But India also has the most remotest and the most
Exactly.
complex parts where education would not be attractive for a private entrepreneur to provide.
Right.
And that is clearly where the government needs to focus.
It's in fact
Yes.
interesting you mentioned that, because according to this FICCI report, the disparities are enormous. For example, interstate disparities, we're looking at 31.9% enrollment in Delhi versus just 8.3 in Assam. We have similar urban-rural divides, differences across communities, gender disparities, and so on and so forth. But you talked about spending in education. Dr. Sinha, do you believe that we're looking at a budget coming ahead? Do you believe that this is something that could change? We know that education is now a priority. Do you believe that it's going to change? Do you hope it's going to change?
Well, the needs are enormous. So I do hope that it gets better. I think in the 12th five-year plan, which we are part of now, there is a anticipated spend of $20 billion in higher education, and that's fantastic. But it goes back to the question of where you are spending the money
Right.
and how you are spending the money, and are you going to spread the money all over, or are you really going to spend the money on improving quality?
And Mahesh, do you believe that that is something that we are looking at? It's one thing to say we need spending, but we're talking about quality, we're talking about infrastructure, we're talking about know-how, we're talking about putting ourselves out there very seriously in the field of education. So do you believe that all these factors are being taken seriously, are being considered?
See, they are considered, but there's a old saying in Tamil, where it says that Chattil irundha than hapela varum. There has to be an allocation which is commensurate with the needs of the country.
Right.
Now, take for example Harvard. Harvard alone spends about 20,000 crores. All the IITs put together have a budget of about 18,000 crores. Now, there's a huge mismatch between the aspirations which we have as a nation and the resources we commit to that aspiration.
Right.
World-class university is an expensive business, very expensive business, and expensive consistently. So India needs to understand where does she wants to put her resources in. So you need to be clear as to where do you want to fund, how do you want to fund, and what is the accountability of that funding.
Right.
Once you're clear about these objectives, a lot of things will fall in place.
Right. And that accountability being very important. Dr. Singh, if you were in charge of changing this scenario around, what is the one thing that you would do?
I think I will agree with both the gentlemen, but in addition to what they have said, I would like to add few things. One, we need to look at that how we are growing as an economy, as a country, what are our needs?
Right.
And we need to, I think that we can educate ourselves from the various models which have been propagated in the West. One is the virtual education. So I think that in this budget, we are looking at that how government is going to invest their resources in benefiting the lakhs of people who are in the villages.
Right.
Maybe that we can also think of a system where we can promote vocational education and the ones who are in the informal sector.
Right.
So those who have been dropouts, class 6 dropout, 8 dropout, 10th dropout, there can be a system where we can say that you can directly be taken into a higher education if you do 2 years of your gap years.
Access of, again, becoming very important.
Access
to that
and
quality.
absolutely.
Even if it's like, even if you honestly might say reasonable quality but some quality education. But Rohan, we're a country of contradictions, and we are unfortunately still in that in that phase, if I may say, where quality education is largely those unless you're really meritorious or you can really afford it. Do you see that scenario changing? We're talking about it, access, equity, equality being, again, key, again, coming from that FICCI report, which you were part of, but again, being key. But do you believe that there's enough being done to make sure it happens, that class 6 dropout or someone who couldn't study beyond class 12 or has no access at all, getting some quality education?
Well, quality is one of the most important focus areas of the government, and the Rashtriya Uchchtar Shiksha Abhiyan, which is the policy which is going to drive higher education in the country, has one of its foremost pillars as focus on quality. and the government is spending a lot of money on improving the quality of of education across the various segments. And quality as an area is means different to different people.
Right.
Even in international rankings, given that we have all the best institutions in the country doing very well,
Yet we don't sort of
yet we don't
figure
figure out in the
globally,
top
right,
200
right.
institutions.
We keep saying that we are different, we are complex,
Right.
we are very complicated.
But it's time to perhaps.
The truth is that a lot of the solutions that exist, we are reluctant to absorb also.
Right.
Let us not start reinventing the wheel.
Correct.
The second thing I would say is that every show like this that we participate in, we always focus on the problems. What if we were to turn it around and say, what is the opportunity?
Right.
And how do we get to that opportunity?
In
And
fact, that's perfect, because we're going to slip into a quick break, and coming after that, we look at exactly that. It is, of course, almost a cliche, as Sina was saying, to look at the glass being half empty, but there's no denying, like I said right in the beginning, that the scenario's changed, courtesy a lot of sweeping changes that the sector has seen, private players and their involvement being one of them. We slip into a quick break, back with more on the opportunities on the road ahead and how we can take the bull by horns finally. Back after a quick break.